what's good, my people? Welcome back to Bingeable Recaps. Apparently, Apple TV has made it their job to feed us back-to-back with good shows this year, and their latest offering is Stick. Now, when I first heard golf show, I was like, is this really for me? But I gave it a shot, and it grew on me. This one's a brilliant sports comedy that takes us deep into the surprisingly dramatic and hilarious world of professional golf. We're talking Owen Wilson as a washed-up golf legend, trying to find redemption by coaching a hot-headed teen. So grab your putters or your popcorn, because we're diving into the full first season of Stick. So we kick off with Pryce Cahill, and honestly, the guy is a master at selling dreams, which is pretty ironic since his own are clearly shattered. We see him at the golf center, just sweet-talking some regular customer who clearly has no business dreaming of golf greatness. But Pryce, he's so smooth, laying on the flattery and these perfectly crafted lies, that he convinces this poor guy to drop a huge chunk of cash on super expensive golf clubs. It's all about making the customer feel good, and Pryce is ecstatic, already counting his commission. But then, bam, he goes to his boss for an advance, and his hopes crash. Turns out he's taken so many advances already that he actually owes the store money. What a way to start, right? You immediately know this guy is in deep trouble. It becomes super clear, really fast, that Pryce's life is hanging by a thread. He was once a golf prodigy, with trophies and everything, but now? He's just a burnt-out salesman, drowning in debt, totally lost, and haunted by his past. Pryce has cooked up a clever way to make some money on the side. He sits alone in bars, where Mitz, who others don't know is his best friend, talks about his heydays. Apparently, Pryce had an emotional outburst on live TV, hitting his partner. That moment not only ended his career, but got him banned from the sport. Mitz keeps laying it on thick, calling him a has-been, daring him to prove he still got it. Eventually, people at the bar buy into it. They put money down, rooting for the fallen star. And right on cue, Pryce takes the shot and misses. The cash goes to Mitz, and later the two of them split it. It's a calculated hustle. Now, the full gut-wrenching reason behind that meltdown is still kind of a mystery at first, but we start getting hints. We see Pryce watching an old home video, a glimpse of a life that was once full of promise. A loving wife, Amber Lynn, and their little boy, Jet. Just like his dad, Jet also dreamed of playing golf. But then, something absolutely heartbreaking happened. Jet is gone now, and with him, Pryce's love for the game vanished too. Grief has completely hollowed him out, and you realize that explosive rage, that public meltdown, was likely fueled by this unimaginable loss. That loss cost him everything, including Amber Lynn, who, understandably, has moved on and built a stable life without him. Pryce's current world is just messy, sad, and stuck. Exactly like his house. He's refused to leave it for over 2 years, even though Amber Lynn desperately wants to sell it. She even offered him a decent chunk of money, $75,000, to move out, but he just stubbornly clings to it. He's got no real job, just tiny commissions and some pathetic bar scams with his buddy Mitz. He's clinging to that house like a lifeline, almost as if it's the last piece of his old life. But then, something comes along that changes everything. One day, at the local golf course, Pryce spots a teenage boy, and this kid's golf swing is just too perfect to ignore. You can practically see the spark light up in Pryce's dead eyes. He's totally captivated by the kid's natural talent and tries to talk to him, but the boy bolts, because he's sneaking onto the range without paying. All Pryce manages to find out is that the teen works at a nearby department store. Driven by this sudden, desperate hope, he tracks the kid down. But Santi Wheeler wants absolutely nothing to do with this strange older man. Can you blame him? Pryce is coming off a bit creepy here. Since Santi totally shuts him down, Pryce, desperate but determined, goes straight to the boy's mom, Elena. She listens carefully as Pryce lays out his wild plan. He wants to become Santi's sponsor and mentor, take him on a nationwide golf tour, cover all the costs, and help him become a professional. For Pryce, this isn't just about Santi. It's clearly his desperate shot at a second chance, a way to reclaim something he lost, maybe even his own purpose. But Elena is no fool. She knows her son has incredible talent. He used to win every junior tournament until he mysteriously quit at 15. If Pryce wants in on this, he's got to put his money where his mouth is. Her condition is tough but fair, $100,000 up front, and she comes along on the trip to protect Santi and their family's interests. Pryce is in a total panic trying to get the money, calling up old friends who all turn him down. So he makes one last truly desperate offer to Amber Lynn. He'll sign over the house he's clung to for so long, if she pays him $100,000 instead of the $75,000 she originally offered. At first, Amber Lynn completely understandably refuses, especially after hearing about his crazy plan to gamble everything on a teenager. But then, she actually watches Santi play, and more importantly, she sees that spark of hope, that old love for the game, return to Pryce's eyes. In a moment of incredible generosity, or perhaps a desperate hope for Pryce's redemption, she gives in. She cuts the check, He signs the papers, and Pryce hands the money to Elena. And just like that, the journey's on. Pryce also manages to rope Mitz into coming along, even though he's not exactly thrilled about it. But the night before they're supposed to leave, Pryce gets arrested. Turns out he racked up over 31 unpaid parking tickets. He's completely broke and obviously can't pay the fines, though the cops aren't buying that, especially since he still drives around in that old Porsche. He tries calling Mitz, but Mitz doesn't answer. Right then, Elena calls to check in on something, hears a bunch of yelling in the background, and gets the real story from the officer who picks up. And that's it. She's out. She starts unpacking and tells Santi to return Pryce's $100,000. From her point of view, Pryce clearly has baggage, possibly legal trouble, and she's not about to drag her son into anything shady. Eventually, Pryce calls Amber, and she comes through. She bails him out, but it's awkward. She was on a date with her coworker Ben, and apparently they've been seeing each other for 6 months. That hits Pryce a little harder than he expected, but Mitz keeps it real. They've been separated for years. Amber has every right to move on. Santi pushes Elena to reconsider. He tells her they should still go. It's a risk, yeah, but it might be the only shot they get at something better. Elena's still wary, but she listens and decides to trust him. They repack, and the trip is back on. Once they hit the road, though, it's clear this isn't going to be smooth sailing. 4 people, all very different, crammed into this one plan. It gets tense real fast. Pryce had promised accommodation, decent meals, the whole thing. But surprise, he has no money. When Elena and Santi find out they're all supposed to sleep in Mitz, they're like, yeah, no, that's not happening. They make it clear this was not the deal. So Pryce scrambles and eventually convinces Mitz to use his card to pay for a hotel for Elena and Santi, while he and Mitz crash in the RV. They arrive at Sparkling Meadows Country Club for Santi's first official tournament. It's nothing big, just a low-profile amateur competition with no prize money or serious recognition attached. But Pryce, being Pryce, finds a way to raise the stakes. Without telling anyone, he bets $500 on Santi to win. So now it's personal. At first, Santi's killing it. His swings are solid, his placement's clean, and Pryce is already imagining the cash. But halfway through, it all unravels. Santi makes a bad shot, then another. And just like that, his game collapses. This is his biggest issue. He doesn't know how to bounce back once he starts spiraling. And Pryce, instead of calming him down, makes it worse. He yells at the kid, calls him out for wasting his talent, and pushes all the wrong buttons without even realizing it. What Pryce doesn't know is that this is exactly how Santi's dad used to talk to him. Same tone, same pressure, same shame. That's why Santi quit golf in the first place. So the moment Pryce starts in on him, Santi walks off the course and disappears. While everyone's wondering where he went, Santi ends up meeting a girl named Zero, who's just been fired from her job at the country club bar. A douchey customer had harassed her for not laughing at his joke, so she poured beer on him. Elena happened to be nearby and backed her up by dumping an entire jug of water on the guy. It didn't save Zero's job, but it definitely made a statement. The two of them hit it off fast, mostly bonding over their shared annoyance at men who think they run the world. Santi vents and Zero listens. Then she gives him a little push. If he really wants to shut Pryce up, he should do it with his game. Go back, play lights out, and show the man he doesn't need him. That's all Santi needed. He heads back for the 9th round, and this time, he's unstoppable. After fumbling in the 5th, he completely turns things around. Shot after shot, he dominates, and ends up winning the whole thing. The trophy's his. Pryce, of course, wins a couple grand from his bet, but the celebration doesn't go how he imagined. Pryce tries to apologize, but Santi's not having it. He walks right past him and leaves with Zero to go celebrate. Pryce is left standing there, totally stunned, wondering what just happened. Meanwhile, Mitz somehow manages to wedge himself under the RV bed and gets stuck. He calls out for help, and Elena's the one who comes to check on him. She tries to get him out herself, but quickly realizes it's above her pay grade. Before they call for actual help, she strikes a deal. Mitz needs to be more civil, to her and to Santi. No more grumbling, no more weird tension. Mitz reluctantly agrees. Even with all the bumps, it's clear this ragtag group is slowly starting to click. And now that Pryce knows the full story about Santi's dad, there's a good chance he'll try to make things right. A few hours after the tournament, Santi is nowhere to be found, and Pryce is losing his mind. Elena, Santi's mother, is comparatively calmer. She trusts her son and believes he'll return when ready. Mitz is more preoccupied with his thankless role as RV driver and cook, still finding the whole trip pointless. Eventually, Santi returns with a girl. He introduces her as Zero, his new friend, acting like nothing's wrong. Pryce tries to pull him aside to talk, wanting to acknowledge Santi's win, but also raise concerns about the unsustainable brute strength dominating his gameplay. More than that, Pryce wants to apologize, knowing he'd badly misstepped by behaving like Santi's father. But he doesn't get a chance. Santi goes swimming at the motel pool with Zero. The next morning, Pryce makes another attempt, bringing sandwiches to Santi's door, trying to coax him into a coaching session to refine his technique. But Santi's barely interested. He mutters something about swimming with Zero and her friends at a nearby quarry, then casually agrees to a 2 p.m. meeting, a meeting he never shows up for. When Pryce breaks the news to Elena and Mitz, the mood shifts. Elena, though initially relaxed, grows concerned. She trusts her son's independence, but accompanying a girl he just met to a remote, abandoned quarry is a step too far. She suggests they all go there, not only to ensure his safety, but also to give Pryce the opportunity to finally put his foot down and act like a proper mentor. Pryce doesn't fully agree. Discipline has never been his strong suit, but he's desperate to get Santi focused on golf again. Mitz isn't interested, but he has no choice with 2 people constantly nagging him. When the 3 adults reach the quarry, a solitary guard tells them they must buy a unicorn floaty to enter. Elena proposes they buy only one, and she'll drag Santi out. However, Pryce stops her, arguing that it would further alienate Santi from his mother and the group, which would be detrimental to his cause. Besides, Pryce also needs to learn how to step into the role of a stern mentor and guide. Thus, with Elena's blessings and Mitz's continued disregard, Pryce heads into the quarry and reaches the group of teenagers. Pryce is impressively tough yet suave in his first approach, genuinely startling Santi. Pryce only reminds him of the 2 p.m. meeting he skipped and tells him they need to talk. He brings up the upcoming amateur qualifiers, trying to redirect his attention. But Zero quickly senses the tension and drags Santi into the water before Pryce can make real progress. Pryce sets aside his age-related worries and jumps into the natural pool at the quarry, both to prove a point and to continue the discussion with his protege. The 2 finally get some time to sit down and chat, and Santi opens up about how he felt let down by Pryce flipping out in a fit of rage when he couldn't make good shots in the later rounds of the tournament. Pryce apologizes and tries to educate Santi about the complex realities of an athlete's life, revealing that he too was a young golf prodigy who didn't know what he didn't know about the sport. He attempts to convince Santi to use his head instead of overthinking his game or being unnecessarily aggressive, advocating for a sustainable playing style. But Santi isn't buying it. He's seen this pattern before, men who scream and belittle, only to return the next day with hollow apologies. That was his father's playbook, and he's not interested in repeating it. He tells Pryce to keep cashing the checks, confident he'll keep winning without him. An ad for Ready Safe Insurance pops up on the RVTV, announcing the upcoming invitational tournament, hosted by Clark Ross. Elena had made a comment earlier that day about how Pryce wouldn't understand parenting since he never had a child. Mitz uses this moment to reveal the truth. Clark Ross isn't just a tournament host. He was Pryce's old playing partner, the one who witnessed and helped provoke Pryce's infamous meltdown at Sawgrass. Years ago, in the middle of a high-profile tournament, Pryce had lost control, flung his clubs, punched Ross, and let his grief explode in front of cameras, coaches, and thousands of spectators. What no one knew was that Pryce had just lost his 4-year-old son, Jet, to cancer. He never told anyone, never grieved properly. So when Clark made a cruel remark about his performance that day, Pryce's pain detonated. That one meltdown ended his career, and he was banned from the PGA shortly after. Now Clark is still mocking him, subtly, but deliberately. The ad even parodies Pryce's infamous tantrum. A confrontation feels inevitable. While Santi seems not to listen to anyone, he certainly listens to Zero, especially when everyone witnesses Santi refusing meat after Zero reveals she doesn't eat meat due to some mumbo-jumbo about how mass production of meat contributes to the climate crisis, along with it being a horrible choice to support corporate companies like McDonald's. Pryce, watching this unfold, makes a calculated move. If he can't reach Santi directly, maybe Zero can. He approaches her with a proposal, help guide Santi back on track, and when the boy turns pro, Pryce will pay her $10,000. To prove he's serious, he offers her collateral, his Ryder Cup ring from 1999, his most prized possession in the sport. She agrees. She doesn't have a job anyway. To make it all seem organic, Pryce puts on a whole scene about him being too injured from his jump at the quarry to be Santi's caddy anymore, though he'll continue to coach. Naturally, the next question is who should step in, and Santi doesn't hesitate. He wants Zero. She pretends to think about it, then agrees, playing it cool while Pryce watches everything fall into place. Elena is confused. Mitz isn't. He knows exactly what this is. Game knows game. Before Zero can be of any real help, Pryce has to overcome the first hurdle, convincing her that golf isn't the boring, elitist pastime she thinks it is. To her, it's a game for rich white men who take themselves too seriously. Pryce defends it with the stubborn passion of someone who's given his life to the sport. Zero lets the conversation go, but it's clear, she's not convinced. Their back and forth keeps Mitz awake, and eventually he snaps, frustrated and sleep-deprived. Next, Pryce begins teaching Zero about golf clubs, when to use which and why. But instead of showing her, he lectures her, testing Mitz's patience even further. Still, for Pryce, this step is essential. Santi's biggest weakness is shot selection. He tends to overreach, chasing flashy, high-risk plays that are more about proving himself than winning smart. But if Pryce tries to coach him directly, Santi will resist. That's where Zero comes in. If she can guide him mid-match, Pryce can feed her advice silently. He trains her to read a system of discrete hand signals that he can use during the games. When the tournament begins, Zero excels. She decodes Pryce's instructions perfectly and relays them like they're her own, or like Santi's own instincts. The boy doesn't suspect a thing. He listens, plays smart, and starts rising on the leaderboard, while growing more drawn to Zero by the hour. She also notices his pattern, chasing impossible shots out of pride or the need to impress. But she keeps him grounded, catching him just in time. By the end of day 1, Santi's at the top of the board. Zero starts to enjoy the role, even if she rolls her eyes at being called Pryce's mouthpiece. Everything changes after a conversation with Elena. Zero learns the full story behind Santi's strained past with golf. His father, Gary, was a manipulative man who only showed love when Santi was winning. The moment he stumbled, Gary tore him down with brutal words. That pattern, praise when he excelled, cruelty when he failed, left lasting scars. Eventually, Santi couldn't tell if his father ever meant the love at all, and golf became a symbol of that manipulation. Zero sees the parallel. Pryce's signals, her whispered guidance, the hidden control. It all starts to feel too familiar. She pulls Pryce aside and tells him she's no longer comfortable channeling his instructions. She genuinely likes Santi and doesn't want to be another person shaping him into someone else. Without that guidance, Santi starts slipping, making reckless decisions again, tumbling down the leaderboard. But Zero finds another way. She speaks from the heart, telling him that being around him and with the group makes her feel safe, something rare for her. She wants to stay, but that won't be possible if he loses. Her words land deeper than any tactic ever could. Santi regains focus, plays smart, and clinches the win in the final round. Still, Mitz remains uneasy. He's seen Pryce pour everything into this plan and senses something deeper. Their tension boils over into a full argument, one that turns into a shoving match between two grown men acting like boys. Beneath it, Mitz is afraid. Pryce never dealt with the death of his son Jet. He shut down, lost his career, destroyed his marriage, and never opened up to anyone. Now Santi is the same age Jet would have been, and Mitz worries Pryce is trying to relive fatherhood through him, not just as a coach, but as a surrogate dad. What happens if Santi lets him down? When the fight settles, Pryce finally opens up. He admits he needs this chance, and that he can't do it alone. For the first time in a long time, the two friends laugh, genuinely, and share a cathartic moment of understanding. Mitz isn't just cautious of Pryce, he's also wary of Zero. He urges Elena to find out more about the girl, leading to a difficult but honest conversation. Zero opens up. She was raised mostly by her military father after her artist mother left. No dark secrets. At least, not yet. She later confesses to Santi that she's always had a habit of running, switching jobs, cities, lives, whenever she feels unsafe. As the team hits the road again, the sky is lit by golden sunsets. Santi and Pryce enjoy each other's company again. Elena drives the RV now, a subtle sign that Mitz trusts her. Santi wins the final U.S. amateur qualifier in impressive fashion. After his victory, the group gathers around the RV, celebrating and waiting for the main tournament. For once, they all share a rare moment of joy. And under a sky full of stars, as Mitz had suggested, Santi and Zero camp on the RV. In that quiet moment, away from strategies and signals, they finally kiss. So the morning after their first kiss, Santi and Zero are practically floating. You can feel the giddiness. Zero even hints at their intimacy later, which is cute, if a bit brazen for a caddy. This anticipation sends Santi into an awkward but very real locker room talk with Pryce. Santi assumes his broody, slightly damaged mentor must have been a total ladies' man back in the day, and he's fishing for some pointers. But what he's really anxious about is being a virgin and not knowing how to tell Zero. Pryce's answer is interesting. He basically tells him, hey, sometimes lying is fine if it keeps the peace. Says he'd lie in this situation too. But then he pivots, saying Santi doesn't have to follow his example. It's a classic setup, especially given that Pryce has been lying to Santi himself. That evening, Santi and Zero find their moment in a secluded swimming pool shed, deepening their connection. It's genuinely sweet when Zero admits her own inexperience, revealing her struggles with trust, a barrier Santi seems to effortlessly break down. The next morning, their newfound closeness is obvious, even to Elena, Santi's mom, though she can't quite pinpoint what's changed. Thankfully, Pryce can, and since he's already aware of the budding romance, he covers for Santi, attributing his glow to the RV lifestyle, and even gives him the day off. This leads to a proper date for Santi and Zero at a gaming arcade, where Santi opens up about his mixed-race identity and feeling ungrounded. It's a moment of raw vulnerability and connection, until Santi finds Pryce's Ryder Cup ring in Zero's bag. While Santi and Zero are navigating new romance, Elena and Mitz have been slowly, almost painfully, developing their own bond. But this episode puts them on a rough patch when Elena, emboldened, reveals her plan to invest the entire $100,000 from Pryce into helium stockpiles. Her reasoning is solid. She's seen the supply drop and demand soar, and she's researched its vital industrial uses. She's confident this is her big break. Mitz, predictably, is not impressed. He finds it incredibly risky, advising her to diversify, which is sensible advice. But Elena isn't having it. She sees his caution as just another man trying to control her choices, reminding her of her ex-husband and father. It sparks a heated argument, and Mitz, clearly changed by their interactions, tries to mend things, but Elena is too angry to listen. This fight, hilariously and terrifyingly, leads to them being chased by a bear, forcing them to take refuge on a floating platform. Trapped, Elena finally unleashes her frustration about Mitz always playing it safe, challenging him to name the last daring thing he'd done. His response? He kisses her. It's a truly unexpected moment, a genuine leap of faith that expresses his romantic interest. Elena is stunned into silence, leading to a painfully awkward aftermath where Mitz half-heartedly apologizes. Will this spark something? We'll have to wait, but it's clear the dynamic between them is evolving beyond mere friendship. Pryce himself is grappling with deep loneliness. Seeing a kid's birthday party instantly pulls him back to thoughts of his son, Jet. He calls Amber Lynn, his ex, but she's busy clearing out their old house, only making him feel worse. A sweet young girl, Molly, tries to cheer him up with her doctor play, but Pryce, consumed by his sadness, brushes her off. It's a sad moment that highlights his isolation. He later realizes his mistake and goes back to play with her, which is a small but meaningful step toward healing. The most powerful moment for Pryce comes in a heartfelt conversation with Elena about Jet. This is the first time we see him truly opening up about his grief. He admits he misses his son terribly, but not for the big moments, like graduation or marriage. What he truly misses is the everyday process of watching his son grow from a boy to a teenager, navigating all the messy transitions. It's heartbreaking, but also a significant positive step to see him finally articulate this profound sorrow. The truth unravels, and everything explodes. As the U.S. amateur approaches, Zero discreetly returns the Ryder Cup ring to Pryce, warning him that Santi is asking questions. Pryce tries to calm Santi before play, telling him to trust his instincts. But during a break, Santi confronts him about the ring, asking how he lost it. Pryce's story, that he lost it at a previous golf course, clashes directly with Zero's earlier explanation to Santi that she found it outside the RV yesterday. Pryce scrambles to cover his tracks, trying to merge the two lies into one messy truth, claiming he must have misplaced it in the RV. But it's too late. Santi confronts them both, and Zero, clearly struggling with guilt and growing feelings for Santi, decides she can't keep the secret anymore. She confesses to the deal she made with Pryce. She agreed because Pryce believed Santi would only listen to her, and she desperately needed the money. Santi is absolutely devastated. His world shatters. He goes for the jugular, asking Pryce if he paid Zero to have sex with him. In an emotional outburst, he calls Pryce a loser and storms off. Zero tries to stop him, but Santi cruelly calls her a clown, insults her gender identity, and ridicules her name, saying Zero means nothing. Humiliated, Zero leaves. Santi, now tearing up, tells Pryce he never wants to see him again, declaring that everything has been a lie. It's an intensely painful scene, leaving Pryce once again utterly alone and vulnerable. The episode starts with what looks like a normal, happy family life for Pryce, Amber Lynn, and their young son Jet. We first see a young Jet playfully causing a minor flood by clogging the toilet with his toys. Pryce reacts gently, a contrast to what Amber Lynn might have done, immediately highlighting his softer side as a dad. The scene then jumps ahead, with Jet as a teenager, having taken the family car out without permission. Here, Pryce struggles to be firm, despite the gravity of the situation, underscoring his desire for an open, honest relationship with his son. It's a moment many parents can relate to, caught between discipline and wanting to be the safe person your kid turns to. Further leaps in time portray Jet as a teenager, showing off to a girl at his birthday party with push-ups, much to his parents' endearing embarrassment, and later, the humorous chaos of a poorly chosen self-made tattoo. The final daydream depicts Jet as a young adult, packing for college and opting for a night out with friends over time with his father, casually referencing Grossweiner's law and the art of letting the past go, a poignant and somewhat ironic statement given Pryce's current state of mind. It all unfolds like a highlight reel of a life that never happened. The abrupt end to these reveries finds Pryce wide awake at the camping spot, his mind grappling with the impossibility of these scenarios. In essence, these aren't just scenes, they're Pryce's grief, dressed up as what-ifs, which was stirred up by Santi. Meanwhile, the fallout from Pryce's manipulative plan continues to unfold. Elena, furious about the scheme against Santi, confronts Mitz, who successfully distances himself from the cash deal Pryce made with Zero. Elena apologizes to Santi, who, hardened by past manipulations, remains surprisingly unfazed by Pryce and Zero's betrayal. He sadly equates their actions to his father Gary's conditional love, solidifying his belief that his worth is solely tied to his golfing skills. Despite Elena's efforts to paint a different picture of Gary, Santi's conviction remains unshaken. Recognizing Santi's emotional vulnerability, Elena prioritizes getting them back to their home in Indiana, ready to resume their old lives, even if it means working at the gift shop and Santi returning to school and his convenience store job. She defiantly decides against returning Pryce's money, holding him accountable for the failed plan. However, just as mother and son are about to board their flight, Pryce arrives, delivering a heartwarming apology to Santi. He emphasizes that the past 8 weeks weren't just about golf, but about the genuine memories and bonds formed with Santi and the RV team, underscoring his care for Santi as a person, not just a golfer. This sincere gesture prompts a dramatic change of heart in Santi. In an emotional rush, Santi abandons his plans to leave, chasing after Pryce. He expresses a powerful desire to continue their partnership, unwilling to live with the regret of not pursuing his potential. Despite Pryce's immediate concern about Santi having already withdrawn from the U.S. Amateur, Santi reveals a new, bold plan to participate in the Ready Safe Invitational, hosted by Clark Ross in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if you're not a golf nerd, here's the quick breakdown. In golf, par is the expected number of strokes to finish a hole. A zero handicap means you play at or near par consistently. Basically, you're elite for an amateur. That's where Santi is right now. And under PGA rules, that level qualifies him for entry if he can get a sponsor exemption. Now, since we know Clark Ross is still a PGA member, he can sponsor Santi. But would Clark ever voluntarily sponsor Santi? Let's be honest, not a chance. Mitt sees the opportunity to hustle Ross, but they'll need bait. That's where Zero comes back in. Earlier, Mitz had dropped Zero off at a bus station, where she was grappling with guilt over her role in manipulating Santi, but also frustration with Santi's perceived self-centeredness. With nowhere else to go, Zero was planning to temporarily stay with a friend and work at a funeral home. However, in a touching moment of reconciliation, Santi arrives at the bus station to apologize and bring Zero back into the fold. This act of forgiveness and inclusion signifies a powerful turning point, transforming this diverse group of strangers into a burgeoning, supportive, sweet family. Clark Ross opens with a speech about sincerity that's anything but perfectly rehearsed despite his claims of speaking from the heart. This immediately sets the tone for his character, a man who values perception over reality. His willingness to overlook his suspicions about Sportsnet for an interview, simply because the journalist, Sadie Flores, really Zero, is young and attractive, highlights his superficiality and desire to be admired. Zero, of course, plays him like a fiddle, not only charming him, but also securing a reservation at his own gaudily named Steakhouse Ross, further inflating his ego. We quickly catch on to the elaborate scheme orchestrated by Pryce and his crew. Zero's role is clear. Reel Clark in romantically so Santi can make his move. And just as planned, Santi materializes at their table, oozing fake admiration for Clark. He drops hints about his zero handicap and his supposed inspiration from Clark, all leading to the ultimate ask, a sponsor exemption. The whole idea is to wear Clark down. Overwhelmed by Zero's presence and Santi's persistence, Clark would ideally cave to impress Zero, or just to get rid of Santi. But Clark, while annoyed, isn't that easily swayed. Pryce, knowing Clark might not be easily fooled, has a backup plan that involves him directly. While Clark and Zero are at their table, Pryce sits at the bar, making sure Clark sees him. Clark, true to form, offers Pryce free food and drinks, purely to gloat. Pryce, however, turns this opportunity into a weapon. He orders the most expensive items, and then starts prodding Clark, dredging up their past rivalry. He loudly proclaims his golfing superiority, and even suggests Clark's Sawgrass win was a fluke because Pryce was banned due to his emotional meltdown, a classic Pryce move, as seen in earlier Stick episodes. Pryce then dares Clark to a mini-golf game right there in the restaurant. The exact reason isn't super clear, but Pryce probably wants to win money from Clark, or force him to give Santi the exemption. Mitz and Elena also pretend to be regular customers, betting money on Pryce and Clark to get them to play. But things start to mess up. Pryce shanks his shots, even after a do-over. But the real drama comes from a different angle. Santi and Zero's own complicated romance. Their relationship, previously strained by misunderstandings, still simmers. Santi can't stand her getting close and touchy with Clark as part of the act. His jealousy boils over, leading him to lash out at Zero, calling her insensitive. This is the moment of truth. Zero, having had enough, blows the lid off the entire operation, exposing the elaborate ruse to a stunned Clark. With Pryce's plan in tatters, Clark is hit with the news that Pryce paid Elena a hefty $100,000 to train Santi. This information completely shifts Clark's perspective. He realizes Santi's talent is genuine, and that Pryce's significant investment signals a huge opportunity. Suddenly, the self-serving Clark sees a chance to capitalize. He offers Santi a sponsor exemption, but with a major catch. Pryce has to beat Clark in a single-shot game at Clark's academy. Clark, brimming with confidence, sees this as a win-win. He'll either silence his rival or, more importantly, secure Santi for his Ross Golf Academy for 7 exclusive years. He envisions the fame and fortune Santi will bring as his agent and promoter, cementing his own place in the limelight. Pryce, recognizing that Santi benefits regardless of the outcome, agrees. For most of the episode, Clark, despite his boastful nature, doesn't seem outright malicious. He's just a shrewd businessman. However, just before Pryce takes his crucial shot, Clark's true colors emerge in a vicious personal attack. He coldly asserts that Pryce's Sawgrass breakdown wasn't about his son's death, but because Pryce is, quote, a loser who was never meant to amount to anything. This, however, is his awful attempt to mess with Pryce's game like he did years ago. But Pryce is a changed man. In a powerful display of emotional maturity, he channels his anger into his performance, driven by his commitment to Santi's career. He makes an unbelievable shot, skimming the ball over water and landing it closer than Clark's, winning the contest decisively. Santi gets his much-needed sponsor exemption, setting him up for a PGA tournament. And finally, Santi and Zero reconcile, their romantic tension giving way to confessions of love, promising a stronger bond ahead. The Ready Safe Invitational is finally here, and for Santi Wheeler, it's not just a tournament, it's a dream made real. The kid's buzzing, nervous as hell, and wide-eyed as he signs in, beside names he's idolized his whole life. Real pros are in the mix. Trevor Immelman's on commentary. Keegan Bradley asks to borrow his pen. Wyndham Clark and Max Homa dap up Pryce like old friends. Because, oh yeah, Pryce Cahill? He's not just some washed-up coach out here. He's a legend. And for the first time, Santi sees that up close. Not just the man Pryce is now, but the icon he once was, the guy who inspired the very players Santi looks up to. When the tournament officially kicks off, Santi plays against a fictional pro named Matt Prost. Right away, Prost starts playing head games, calling Santi a zygote, like a tiny beginner, and openly acting like he's better than him. Others had praised Santi for being so young, but Prost's words are just plain mean. He even brags about his own game when Santi hits a few average shots. This really messes with Santi. He's already nervous playing in such a huge event, and Prost's jabs make it worse. Santi's main problem has always been getting too flustered after a few bad shots, which just leads to more mistakes. So after the first round, Santi is stuck in the middle of the scoreboard. It's not the amazing start they wanted, but everyone keeps cheering him on for the next rounds. As Santi and Pryce head to their van, Clark Ross interrupts them. Clark wants Santi to meet some sponsors, but he flat out refuses to let Pryce come along. Right away, Mitt smells something fishy. He knows Clark's trying to steal Santi. Clark goes all out, trying to win Santi over. He takes him out to fancy dinners, shows off his Porsche, and promises him the best training, full public relations teams, and even off-menu Wagyu steak. It's like he's offering Santi a whole new, super rich lifestyle. But Santi isn't completely fooled. He calls Clark out, saying it's not real mentorship, it's just a sales pitch. And more importantly, Santi reminds Clark that it was Pryce who actually got him to this tournament. Still, Clark manages to plant a nagging thought in Santi's head. He warns Santi that Pryce always takes shortcuts, and that shortcuts won't work in pro golf at this high level. Later, on the second day of the tournament, the pressure is even higher for Santi. He's still in the middle of the pack, and this round is an elimination round. He has to play well to keep going. His day starts pretty rough again. Then, on the 12th hole, it's a make-or-break moment. The shot he has to make is incredibly tough, and he's feeling totally unsure. Seeing how nervous he is, Pryce steps in with a wild idea that could really help Santi if he pulls it off. To make the shot on the 12th hole, Santi needs to avoid a sand pit called a bunker, which he messed up in during the first round. So Pryce tells him to take a totally different route, shoot the ball towards the 7th hole first, and then hit it back towards the 12th. This way, he completely avoids the bunker area. It's a legal move, but Santi first refuses, because it feels like a shortcut, and Clark's words from the night before about Pryce's shortcuts are stuck in his head. Santi snaps at Pryce for always taking shortcuts. Pryce defends himself, saying shortcuts aren't always a bad thing. They argue for so long they almost get a penalty for wasting time. But Santi finally makes a decision. More than being convinced by Pryce's coaching, he just realizes he has to listen to his mentor right now. So he goes for the unusual shot. And it pays off big time. Santi nails the shot and immediately jumps way up in the standings. This clever move by Pryce not only helps Santi on that one hole, but also gives him a huge boost of confidence. By the end of this second day, Santi finishes second in the standings and totally blew up online for making that one-of-a-kind shot. Amber Lynn shows up at the golf course on this second day of the tournament, making Pryce visibly happy. She tells him she loved seeing him on TV and came to congratulate him. Pryce has really turned his life around, even fighting his own bad thoughts, and Amber Lynn is super impressed. It's clear they still have feelings for each other. After the third day of the tournament, Pryce and Amber Lynn go out to dinner to catch up. Pryce apologizes for being emotionally distant when she also lost her son, which made her feel even more alone. Amber Lynn accepts his apology, and then, showing they still have feelings, they share a passionate kiss at the restaurant. Afterward, they go to her hotel. Even though Amberlynn invites Pryce inside, clearly for a romantic night, Pryce turns her down. He says he doesn't want to mess up their lives again by getting involved. But it really feels like Pryce still wants to get back with his ex-wife, and since Amberlynn seems ready too, this might happen in the final episode. Meanwhile, Mitz and Elena also have some romance brewing. Zero notices they like each other and tells Mitz to go for it. Zero knows Mitz has been holding back to honor his deceased wife, who he loved deeply, but she convinces him to give love another chance. With everyone feeling good after the third day of the tournament, Mitz kisses Elena in his RV, and they finally become a couple. Just when everything seems to be going great for the crew, a cheerful fan strolls up to Pryce, gushing about how much he loved watching him play back in the day. Seems harmless, until Elena and Santi walk over. It's Gary, Elena's ex, and Santi's father. Classic deadbeat dad. Santi, though, is so happy to see his dad after all this time that he doesn't seem to care about their past. Elena's face tells a different story, because she knows exactly who this man is, especially with him coming back just when Santi began to blow up. Gary shows up all sunshine and smiles, full of praise for his son Santi and acting like the proudest dad in the world. He says he was in Germany when he saw Santi playing in the Ready Safe Invitational and immediately flew back to the US to be by his son's side. What's wild is that Gary seems to have completely forgotten, or, more likely, is just ignoring all the past drama with Santi. He even invites Santi and Zero to Germany. Talk about rolling out the red carpet. But not everyone's buying Gary's act. Elena knows her ex-husband too well and smells a rat. She's seen this movie before, and she's convinced Gary hasn't changed. The problem is, Santi's so thrilled she can't really say anything without potentially hurting him. Tough spot for a mom. Pryce and Mitz are playing it cool. They're not jumping into conclusion. Pryce, being the stand-up guy he is, even gets Gary an access pass. He knows Gary was Santi's first coach and is probably thinking, okay, let's see how this plays out. The final round kicks off, and the commentators are hyped about Colin Morikawa and Santi. Santi's crushing it, even out-hitting Morikawa at one point, sharing the lead. Then a thunderstorm hits, causing a delay, and Santi gets a breather. This is where Gary makes his move. He pulls Santi aside, acting like a completely changed man. He's all, "I've learned my lesson," and starts reminiscing about how good Santi was when he was his caddy back in the day. It's a classic manipulation tactic, and sadly, it works. Santi, wanting to believe in his dad, agrees to let Gary take over from Pryce as his caddy. Dumbass. Pryce, bless his heart, is clearly hurt, but steps aside because he genuinely wants what's best for Santi. He probably thought, like many of us, that maybe Gary had changed. And just like Elena predicted, it all goes south. Fast. Gary isn't just caddying, he's coaching every shot. At first, he's overly supportive, praising Santi. But the second Santi starts messing up, Gary flips. He gets angry, frustrated, and totally arrogant. He blames Santi for every bad shot, calls him silly, and basically pumps him full of overconfidence, pushing him to take risky shots that backfire spectacularly. Santi starts dropping like a rock on the leaderboard. The commentators are even feeling bad for the kid. This is the exact toxic dynamic we've heard about before, between them. Santi needs calm and guidance in these moments, something Pryce had mastered. But Gary's ego is just too big. While Santi's meltdown is happening, Pryce is off drinking alone, clearly bummed. Mitz, who previously questioned Pryce funding Santi, finally admits he was wrong about Santi's talent. He tells Pryce to go help Santi, not just as a coach, but as a mentor. This is the push Pryce needed. So Pryce concocts a plan. He gets a groundskeeper to turn on the sprinklers, causing another delay. He then runs onto the course, offering to step back in as caddy and coach. Gary, of course, is furious, but Santi's had enough. When asked who he wants, he chooses Pryce. Mic drop. This is a massive turning point. With Pryce back by his side, Santi bounces back. The crowd is electric, cheering him on as he makes incredible, calculated shots. He might not win the tournament, facing off against the formidable Colin Morikawa, but he absolutely steals the show. Everyone's talking about Santi Wheeler's incredible debut. The season ends a bit later, with Santi and Pryce practicing together. Santi even gets Pryce to take a shot, and it's a beauty, hinting that Pryce might even get back into the game himself. More importantly, it solidifies their bond. They're not just player and coach, they're mentor and protege, on and off the course. It's a really heartwarming end to a roller coaster of a season.